Story 1: The Trail That Doesn't End. Sarah had been hiking the Cascade Ridge Trail for 3 years, every weekend without fail. She knew every twist, every fallen log, every stream crossing by heart. So when she found herself walking down a section of trail she'd never seen before, her blood went cold. The morning had started normally. She'd parked at the familiar trailhead, checked her GPS one last time, and set off at 6 a.m. sharp. The first 2 miles were exactly as they should be: the steep switchbacks, the weathered wooden bridge over Miller Creek, the distinctive boulder shaped like a sleeping bear. But somewhere after the 3rd mile marker, everything changed. The trees seemed taller here, their canopy so thick that only slivers of gray morning light filtered through. The familiar dirt path had become something else entirely: smooth stones fitted together like an ancient road, moss creeping between the cracks. Sarah stopped and pulled out her phone. No signal, her GPS showed her location as a blank gray void. "This is impossible," she whispered to herself, her voice swallowed by the oppressive silence of these alien woods. She turned around to head back, but the stone path stretched behind her just as it did ahead, unbroken, endless. With no sign of the dirt trail she'd been following moments before. The trees looked identical in every direction, like a living maze designed by some malevolent intelligence. Sarah's hiking boots clicked against the stones as she picked up her pace, trying to retrace her steps. But with each step, the wrongness of this place pressed down on her like a physical weight. The air smelled different here, not the clean pine scent she loved, but something ancient and stagnant, like water that had been sitting in a cave for centuries. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time seemed to flow differently here. The light never changed, trapped in that same twilight gloom. Sarah's water bottle was half empty when she noticed the first sign that she wasn't alone. Carved into a massive oak tree beside the path was a message, the letters deep and fresh. Sarah turned back now, Sarah. Her name, someone knew her name. With trembling fingers, she touched the carved letters. The bark was warm, almost feverish, and seemed to pulse under her touch like living skin. She jerked her hand back and stumbled away from the tree, her heart hammering against her ribs. That's when she heard the footsteps. They came from behind her, matching her pace exactly. When she walked faster, they walked faster. When she stopped, they stopped. But every time she spun around, the stone path stretched empty behind her, disappearing into that suffocating green darkness. Sarah broke into a run. The footsteps followed, no longer bothering to match her rhythm. They were gaining on her, the sound of boots on stone growing louder and more distinct. She could hear breathing now, labored and wet, like someone running with fluid in their lungs. The path curved ahead, and Sarah saw something that made her stumble and nearly fall. Another hiker sat on a moss-covered log beside the trail, head buried in their hands. They were wearing the exact same hiking boots as Sarah, the same blue jacket, the same backpack. "Hey," Sarah called out, slowing to a stop, "are you okay?" The figure looked up and Sarah screamed. It was her own face, but wrong, skin gray and mottled, eyes clouded white like milk, mouth hanging open in a silent wail. The thing that looked like Sarah raised one decomposing hand and pointed down the path ahead. "Keep walking," it rasped in Sarah's own voice, distorted and hollow. "The trail doesn't end." Sarah turned and ran harder than she'd ever run in her life, crashing through low-hanging branches that seemed to grab at her jacket, stumbling over roots that appeared from nowhere to trip her. Behind her, she could hear multiple sets of footsteps now, and voices calling her name in her own voice, over and over. "Sarah, Sarah, Sarah." The stone path began to slope downward, and Sarah realized with growing horror that she was descending into something. The trees grew sparser, revealing glimpses of what lay ahead: an enormous circular clearing filled with concentric rings of standing stones. And sitting against each stone was a hiker. They all looked exactly like Sarah. Some appeared freshly dead, their hiking clothes still clean and bright. Others were nothing but bones in rotting fabric. A few seemed to be in various stages of decay, their dead eyes all tracking her movement as she skidded to a stop at the edge of the clearing. In the center of the circle stood a wooden sign, its paint fresh and bright: Cascade Ridge Trail Mile Marker 3. One of the fresher corpses stood up and walked toward her with jerky, unnatural movements. When it spoke, Sarah's own voice emerged from its gray lips. "Welcome home, Sarah. We've been waiting for you to join us. The trail doesn't end here, it begins." Sarah's scream echoed through the clearing as dozens of her own corpses rose to their feet and began walking toward her, their dead mouths all moving in unison. "The trail doesn't end, Sarah. It never ends, and neither do we." The last thing Sarah remembered was the feeling of cold, dead hands pulling her toward an empty stone, and the realization that somewhere back in the real world, another Sarah was probably just parking at the trailhead, checking her GPS one last time, and setting off at 6 a.m. sharp. Story 2, The Trail That Loops. I should have turned back when I saw the cairn. It was just a pile of rocks, flat stones stacked waist-high beside the trail marker, but something about it felt wrong. The stones were too uniform, too deliberately placed, and someone had scratched symbols into the topmost rock. Not words, just spirals and lines that hurt to look at. My name's Aaron, and I'd been hiking the Pinewood Ridge Trail for 3 days. Solo backpacking trip. 26 miles through the Cascade Wilderness, with only my tent, my supplies. And the kind of silence that makes you remember you're just meat walking through something ancient. The trail had been perfect until mile 18. That's when I found the cairn, and that's when I noticed the trees. Every Douglas fir on the left side of the trail had a mark carved into it about 7 feet up, a single vertical slash. The sap was still weeping from the cuts, glistening like amber blood in the late afternoon sun. I pulled out my phone. No signal, obviously. I'd been off-grid since the trailhead. I snapped a photo of the cairn anyway, my hands shaking slightly. The symbols seemed to shift in the frame like optical illusions. Just keep moving, I told myself. 8 more miles to the ranger station. The forest pressed in tighter as I walked. The marked trees continued slash after slash after slash. I counted them. 37 marks in half a mile. All identical. All exactly 7 feet high. Then I heard the whistling. It started faint like wind through a narrow gap, but there was no wind. The air hung thick and still, heavy with the smell of pine sap and something else, something sweet and rot, like fruit left too long in this. The whistling grew louder, not a tune, just a single note wavering coming from somewhere ahead on the trail. My throat went dry. Hello, I called out. The whistling stopped. I waited, heart hammering, but heard nothing except the distant call of a crow. I forced myself forward, rounding a bend in the trail. That's when I saw the backpack. It sat in the middle of the path, pristine and upright, as if someone had carefully placed it there. A large blue hiking pack, the kind with external frame and rain cover. The straps were undone, hanging loose. I approached slowly, every instinct screaming at me to run, but curiosity stupid, human curiosity won out. The backpack belonged to someone named J. Peterson, according to the faded tag. Inside I found a sleeping bag, a half-eaten bag of trail mix, a water filter, and a journal. I shouldn't have opened the journal. The first entries were normal trail conditions, mileage, campsite notes. But around day 3, the handwriting changed, became frantic, pressed so hard the pen tore through the paper in places. Day 3, the trees have marks, counted 89 so far, they weren't there yesterday. Day 4, I've been walking for 11 hours, the trail won't end, past the same cairn 3 times. GPS is going haywire, says I'm moving in circles, but the trail is straight. Day 5, the whistling started last night. It comes from the trees. I think something is walking parallel to the trail, just out of sight. I can hear branches breaking. Day 6, I'm not alone. I saw her today. She was standing between 2 marked trees, just watching me. She looked like a hiker, green jacket, blonde hair, but her eyes were wrong. Too wide, too black. When I called out, she turned and walked into the forest. She moved like her joints bent the wrong way. Day 7, I found my own cairn today. The one I built at my campsite 3 nights ago, but I've been walking south. I can't be back here, I can't be back here. The final entry was just one sentence, written in shaking letters. She's whistling right behind me. The journal trembled in my hands. I looked up, scanning the forest. Nothing, just trees and shadows and silence. I shoved the journal into my own pack and kept moving, faster now, nearly jogging. The marked trees blurred past, slash, 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 I stopped counting. The sun was setting, painting the forest in shades of amber and blood. I needed to make camp, but the thought of stopping, of being stationary in the dark with whatever had stalked J. Peterson. A whistle pierced the air. Right behind me. I spun around. The trail behind me was empty, but in the fading light, I saw something that made my blood turn to ice. Footprints in the dirt, fresh boot prints, leading from the forest onto the trail, stopping just 10 feet behind where I stood. They were my boot prints. The tread pattern matched mine exactly. I ran. The trail became a blur of green and brown. My pack slammed against my back, the straps digging into my shoulders. The whistling followed, sometimes ahead, sometimes behind, sometimes on both sides at once. Branches whipped my face. Roots grabbed at my feet, and the marked trees just kept coming, an endless corridor of slashes that seemed to glow in the dying light. I don't know how long I ran, time stretched and compressed. The forest darkened until I was stumbling blind, using my phone's flashlight to follow the trail. Then I saw it. The cairn. The same spiraling symbols. No, that was impossible. I'd been running south for, I checked my watch, 47 minutes. I should be miles past that point. Unless J. Peterson had been right. My hands shook as I pulled out my GPS. The screen flickered, showing my position as a jittering dot that traced impossible patterned circles within circles within circles. A twig snapped behind me. I turned slowly, the flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. She stood at the edge of the light. A woman in a green jacket, blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked like any other hiker, except her head was tilted at an angle that was just slightly wrong, and her eyes. Her eyes were completely black. No whites, no iris, just obsidian pools that reflected my flashlight like twin mirrors. "You're on the wrong trail," she said. Her voice was pleasant, conversational, but it came from the wrong place, not from her mouth, but from somewhere behind her, deeper in the forest. I'm on the marked trail," I stammered. "I'm heading to the ranger station." She smiled, her teeth were too white. "This trail doesn't go to ranger stations, it goes in." "In where?" "In." She took a step closer. Her movement was fluid but wrong, like watching someone walk underwater. The others didn't understand either. They kept trying to leave. Walking and walking and walking. Another step, but the trail always brings them back. I could see over her shoulder now, back into the forest where the flashlight beam penetrated a few dozen feet. There were shapes between the trees. People standing motionless, watching. I counted 6, no, 8, no, more emerging from the shadows, all dressed in hiking gear, all with the same two wide eyes. "J. Peterson," I whispered. One of the shapes raised a hand in acknowledgement. "The trail needs walkers," the woman said. "It gets lonely. We keep it company." She was close now, close enough that I could smell her, that sweet rotten fruit smell. "You'll keep us company too." I did the only thing I could think of. I left the trail. I plunged into the forest at a dead run, crashing through underbrush, branches tearing at my clothes and skin. Behind me, I heard them following, not running, just walking, but somehow keeping pace no matter how fast I moved. The whistling surrounded me, a chorus now, different notes weaving together into something that might have been a melody if melodies could sound like screaming. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs gave out, until I collapsed against a massive fallen log. Sobbing and gasping, the forest had gone quiet, no whistling. No footsteps, no sounds at all. I waited, listening to my own ragged breathing, watching the darkness between the trees. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time felt broken here eventually. As the first gray light of dawn filtered through the canopy, I forced myself to move. I had to find a way out. Had to get back to civilization. I climbed over the log and froze on the other side. Was a trail, a maintained hiking trail with a wooden marker sign. The sign read, "Pinewood Ridge Trail, Ranger Station, 8 miles. I looked back the way I'd come. Just forest. No log, no trail, nothing but trees stretching endlessly. I looked at the trail ahead. The morning light made everything seem normal, peaceful even then. I noticed the trees, every Douglas fir on the left side had a mark carved into it. A single vertical slash, about 7 feet up. And there, just 100 yards ahead, I could see a pile of rocks. A cairn. I sank to my knees in the dirt, my whole body shaking. The trail always brings them back. I don't know how long I knelt there. Eventually, I heard voices, real voices, human and warm and concerned. Hey, are you okay?" A group of hikers emerged from around the bend, 3 of them wearing bright jackets and carrying day packs. Normal people, real people. I need help," I managed. "I need to get out of here." They helped me up, gave me water, asked what happened. I tried to explain the cairn, the marked trees, the woman, but it came out jumbled and insane. "We'll hike with you to the ranger station," the woman leading the group said. She had kind eyes and a reassuring smile. "It's just 8 miles, you'll be okay." We walked together. I stayed in the middle of their group, taking comfort in their chatter about trail conditions and weather and all the wonderfully mundane things normal hikers talk about. But I kept watching the trees. Slash, slash, slash. After an hour, I worked up the courage to ask, "Do you see the marks on the trees?" The woman glanced at the carved slashes. "Oh, those, they've been doing trail maintenance, marking trees for removal, I think." "They are fresh," I said in the sap. "Been there for years," one of the men interrupted cheerfully. "This whole section is scheduled for thinning." I stared at him, at all of them. The woman's smile never wavered. "Come on, the ranger station is just ahead, you can rest there." We rounded a bend. In the middle of the trail sat a backpack, blue external frame. J. Peterson. The same backpack in the exact same position. "Is that yours?" the woman asked, still smiling. I backed away, shaking my head. The three hikers watched me with expressions of concern that didn't quite reach their eyes. Eyes that seemed just a little too wide in the dappled sunlight. "You dropped your pack," the man said. "You should pick it up, you'll need it for the rest of the trail." "This trail doesn't go to ranger stations," I whispered, "it goes in." The woman's smile widened. "You understand now." The whistling started again, rising from the forest all around us. And I realized, with a horror that hollowed out my chest, that I couldn't remember what the ranger station looked like. Couldn't remember the parking lot where I'd left my car. Couldn't remember anything before the trail. How long had I been walking? "Welcome home," the woman said. "I'm writing this on paper torn from J. Peterson's journal." I found a pen in the backpack. "My backpack now, I suppose. I don't know if anyone will find this. I don't know if anyone can. The trail goes in, it always goes in. I can see the cairn up ahead. I've passed it 43 times now, or maybe it's the same time, looping over and over. The others are walking with me. J. Peterson is here, and the woman in the green jacket. And dozens more whose names I'll never know. We walk together, we keep the trail company. And we wait for new walkers to join us. If you're reading this, if you find this journal on the Pinewood Ridge Trail, turn back. The cairn is a warning. But you won't turn back, I can hear you already, your footsteps on the trail behind us. The trail always needs more walkers.